What if the most celebrated royal pregnancy of our time was nothing but a carefully staged illusion? What if the woman hailed as a modern Cinderella, who captivated millions with her story of finding love in the British monarchy, was now being accused of orchestrating one of the greatest deceptions in royal history? The world stopped in awe when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced in October 2018 that they were expecting their first child. It was a moment of pure joy for supporters of the couple, an emotional milestone for a duchess who had battled racism in the press and faced relentless scrutiny since stepping into the royal spotlight. Headlines screamed of a new beginning for the modern monarchy. Social media overflowed with congratulations. Baby showers, speculation over names, and admiration of Meghan's glow filled every corner of the internet. To the outside world, Meghan's pregnancy seemed like a fairy tale unfolding in real time. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But behind the carefully curated photos and glowing headlines, some people began noticing details that didn't add up. Videos surfaced showing Meghan's baby bump seemingly shifting in shape and size in ways that defied natural explanation. Conspiracy theories bloomed like wildfire. Was the Duchess of Sussex truly pregnant? Or was she wearing a prosthetic belly to maintain appearances while a surrogate quietly carried the child she would one day call her own? At first, these whispers were dismissed as cruel attacks from Meghan's detractors. They were labeled misogynistic, racist, and a sad reflection of society's obsession with tearing down successful women. But now, years later, a shocking twist has emerged that threatens to turn rumor into reality. A woman, whose identity has been kept hidden for her safety, has come forward with an explosive claim. She, not Meghan Markle, is the biological mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor. This woman says she was hired as a surrogate, promised anonymity and financial security, and then discarded as the world fell in love with Meghan's carefully staged pregnancy. She alleges that powerful figures within the royal family worked tirelessly to cover up the truth, fearing the scandal could destroy not only Meghan and Harry's reputation, but also the fragile image of the monarchy itself. Why is she speaking out now? According to her, the emotional toll of giving birth to a child she has never been allowed to see has become too much to bear. In a trembling voice, she says, "I was supposed to stay silent forever. But every time I see his face in the media, every time I hear Meghan call him her son, I feel like I'm losing a piece of myself." This revelation isn't just shocking, it's potentially devastating. If true, it raises questions about Archie's status in the royal line of succession, the legality of Meghan's actions, and whether Prince Harry himself was complicit or a victim of deception. To understand how we got here, we must revisit the moments that first fueled suspicion. Meghan's now infamous walk in Birkenhead, where eagle-eyed viewers noticed her bump moving oddly as she bent down to greet children. Her appearance on a talk show where the outline of her stomach seemed to collapse briefly as she sat down. A viral clip from an awards ceremony where her bump appeared much larger than in photos taken just days earlier. Each of these incidents sparked waves of online debate. But nothing prepared the world for the claims of this surrogate, who insists she holds proof of her pregnancy, including medical records, private agreements, and text messages exchanged with royal aides during the 9 months leading up to Archie's birth. If her story is true, why didn't she come forward sooner? She says she was bound by a strict non-disclosure agreement, threatened with legal and financial ruin if she ever spoke out. But recent events, a family illness, and what she describes as a spiritual awakening have pushed her to break her silence. "I can't carry this secret to my grave," she says. "He deserves to know where he really came from." And yet, even as her words spread across social media and alternative news platforms, Meghan and Harry remain silent. No statements, no denials, no acknowledgement. Buckingham Palace has issued its usual refrain: "We do not comment on private family matters." This silence, rather than quelling the fire, has only fanned it further. Could there be truth buried in this woman's words? Is this the ultimate betrayal of royal protocol? Or is this simply the desperate cry of someone seeking attention and money at the expense of a high-profile family? Over the next chapters, we will peel back the layers of this controversy, from Meghan's pregnancy announcement to the surrogate's alleged recruitment, from Harry's rumored role in the secrecy to the potential consequences for Archie himself. We'll hear from insiders, explore the timeline of events, and examine the evidence both for and against these extraordinary claims. But one thing is certain, If even a fraction of what this woman says is true, the story of Meghan Markle and baby Archie is not the fairy tale we were led to believe. It's a labyrinth of secrets, lies, and heartbreak that could unravel everything. And as we dive deeper, one question looms large. Why would someone risk everything: power, love, even her place in history, to hide the truth about her own child? This is not just a story about Meghan Markle. It's a story about motherhood, identity, and the dangerous lengths people will go to protect a narrative. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see the Sussex family forever. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced their first pregnancy to the world in October 2018, the news swept across every continent like wildfire. To their supporters, it felt like the ultimate validation of their love story. The young couple, having survived the storm of media scrutiny, were about to welcome new life into the royal family, a child who would symbolize a new era for the monarchy. Royal correspondents spoke of a baby born of modern values, someone destined to bring diversity and fresh energy to a family steeped in centuries of tradition. It all began with a carefully timed announcement during the Sussex's royal tour of Australia. As Meghan and Harry arrived hand in hand at Sydney's Admiralty House, their smiles seemed brighter than ever. Meghan wore a simple white dress that clung lightly to her midsection, revealing just the faintest hint of a bump. Royal watchers went into overdrive, analyzing every gesture, every touch, every glance between the couple. It was official. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were expecting their first child in the spring of 2019. The world reacted with overwhelming joy. Social media exploded with messages of congratulations. Fashion brands began designing maternity looks inspired by Meghan's style. Talk shows discussed baby names and speculated on whether the child would be a boy or a girl. Royal biographers spoke of how Harry had always longed for children and how Meghan had expressed her desire to be a mother in interviews years before she met him. But alongside the tidal wave of support, something else was brewing, something far darker. Almost from the moment of the announcement, a small but vocal group began questioning the narrative being presented. These critics were not content with the glossy images and glowing reports. They scrutinized every photograph, every video clip, every public appearance Meghan made during her pregnancy. During the early months, the controversy remained contained to fringe blogs and conspiracy theory forums. But as Meghan's pregnancy progressed, the whispers became louder. The first major incident that ignited suspicion happened during Meghan's visit to Birkenhead in January 2019. Meghan stepped out in a striking purple dress with a red coat, and her bump seemed unusually prominent. As she bent down to greet a group of children, onlookers noticed her belly shift in a way that defied expectation. In slow-motion replays of video footage, her stomach appeared to fold slightly as she squatted. Critics pounced. Was this just the natural movement of fabric and skin, or evidence of a prosthetic baby bump? The palace dismissed such talk as absurd and offensive. Meghan's defenders argued that pregnancy affects every woman differently and that such speculation was misogynistic and cruel. Even so, the footage continued to circulate, amassing millions of views on YouTube and fueling countless debates. Then came Meghan's appearance at the British Fashion Awards in December 2018. Wearing a sleek black Givenchy gown, she cradled her stomach lovingly as she took the stage to present an award. To many, she looked radiant. But to her critics, the size of her bump seemed inconsistent with photos taken just days earlier. Once again, conspiracy theories began to surface. Some claimed the bump looked too high for her stage of pregnancy. Others pointed out that Meghan was remarkably active, wearing high heels, frequently squatting down, and even practicing yoga, behaviors that, while not impossible, struck some as unusual for a woman in her second trimester. The scrutiny intensified in February 2019 when Meghan traveled to New York City for a lavish baby shower thrown by her friends. The event was private, but paparazzi photos of Meghan entering and leaving the Mark Hotel showed her bump shifting position slightly between shots. To critics, these images provided more fuel for their theory that Meghan's pregnancy was somehow staged. At this point, mainstream media outlets began cautiously acknowledging the rumors, not endorsing them, but reporting on their existence. Headlines like "The Bizarre Meghan Markle Pregnancy Conspiracies Explained" began appearing. Royal commentators denounced the rumors as cruel and unfounded. Still, the speculation refused to die. As Meghan entered her third trimester, public appearances became less frequent, but each one was closely analyzed. During a visit to a charity event in March 2019, Meghan was photographed sitting down awkwardly, and in one frame, her bump appeared to flatten momentarily. The clip was shared widely online. For those inclined to believe the rumors, these moments formed a pattern too suspicious to ignore. For others, they were nothing more than a sign of how intense and invasive the scrutiny of Meghan's life had become. It was in this environment, half adoration, half suspicion, that Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor entered the world on May 6, 2019. The announcement came in the form of an Instagram post from the Sussex's official account, declaring, "It's a boy." But even Archie's birth did little to silence the controversy. Meghan and Harry made the unprecedented decision to skip the traditional post-birth photo call outside the hospital, instead opting for a private family photo taken days later. In the images released to the public, Meghan and Harry stood in St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle, beaming as they introduced their son to the world. Meghan looked slim and composed, prompting some to question how she could have recovered so quickly from childbirth. Royal fans praised the couple for doing things their own way, but critics were relentless. Why hadn't Meghan given birth in a hospital like other royal mothers? Why was there so little transparency about the circumstances of Archie's birth? Over time, the controversy faded somewhat, replaced by newer royal dramas and headlines. But for a small group of believers, the question of Meghan's pregnancy never went away. They continued to pore over every detail, convinced that something wasn't right. And now, years later, their suspicions have been reignited by the Surrogate's shocking claims. Did Meghan Markle carry her own child? Or was Archie the result of a secret surrogacy agreement concealed from the world in order to maintain a picture-perfect royal narrative? The answers may lie in the testimony of the woman who says she was there every step of the way. Silenced once, but now determined to speak her truth no matter the cost. As we turn to her story, the question becomes more urgent. Is this a courageous act of a mother fighting for justice, or the desperate ploy of someone looking to destroy a duchess? Whatever the truth, one thing is clear: the story of Meghan's pregnancy is far from over. As Meghan Markle's pregnancy progressed, the world watched with fascination. Every public appearance, every candid photograph, every video clip seemed to spark a new round of excitement. But alongside the admiration, a strange and persistent undercurrent began to form. In corners of the internet, people started asking unsettling questions. Why did Meghan's baby bump seem to behave so unusually? The first waves of suspicion started innocuously enough. In November 2018, Meghan appeared at a charity gala in London wearing a sequined evening gown that hugged her figure. As cameras flashed, her growing belly became the center of attention. But when side-by-side photos of Meghan at two separate events just days apart began circulating online, some viewers thought they noticed discrepancies in the size and shape of her bump. Was it merely the angle of the camera, or did something else explain the differences? At first, the chatter was limited to fringe blogs and conspiracy-driven forums. Royal supporters dismissed the talk as little more than online bullying, fueled by racism and misogyny. Yet as Meghan's pregnancy entered its second trimester, the murmurs became louder, fueled by a series of moments that even casual observers found odd. One of the most talked-about incidents occurred in January 2019 during Meghan and Harry's visit to Birkenhead. Meghan, radiant in a purple dress with a bright red coat, greeted crowds of admirers, crouching down repeatedly to accept gifts and speak with children. Video footage from that day was posted online, where viewers noticed that as Meghan squatted, her bump appeared to shift upward, almost folding in on itself as though it were being compressed. When slowed down and analyzed frame by frame, the clip took on an unsettling quality. The internet erupted. "Is Meghan wearing a fake belly?" one user posted. Another wrote, "I've had children, and I can tell you, this isn't how a baby bump behaves." Hashtags like #MooBump and #FakePregnancy began trending, sparking debates in comment sections and forums worldwide. Meghan's defenders were quick to counter these claims. They pointed out that maternity fashion often incorporates padding, and that loose-fitting fabrics can create strange visual effects. They also noted that every woman carries differently during pregnancy, and no two baby bumps look exactly the same. But the rumors refused to die. Another incident that became a flashpoint for speculation took place in February 2019 when Meghan visited the National Theatre in London. Dressed in a cream-colored dress and matching coat, she moved gracefully around the venue. But in one video, as she turned sharply to greet someone, viewers claimed her bump seemed to swing slightly from side to side. "That's not a natural movement for a pregnant belly," one viral tweet declared. It looks like it's attached externally and isn't part of her body. The palace, true to form, issued no response to the growing speculation. Silence only added fuel to the fire. Perhaps the most notorious moment came later that month during Meghan's surprise appearance at a panel discussion for International Women's Day. As she sat down, wearing a sleek black and white dress, cameras caught her belly briefly appearing to flatten. Within hours, slow-motion versions of the clip were circulating online, accompanied by captions like, "Look, the bump collapses when she sits." Those convinced of a conspiracy claimed that Meghan was using a prosthetic pregnancy belly, a so-called moon bump, to fake her condition while a surrogate carried her child in secret. They pointed to online retailers selling realistic silicone pregnancy bellies and suggested that Meghan's bump behaved in ways consistent with such devices. Her supporters pushed back hard, denouncing the theories as cruel and unfounded. "This is harassment," one commentator wrote. "People are so desperate to hate Meghan they'll invent lies about her body." But even mainstream media began to take notice. Outlets like the Daily Mail and The Sun ran stories dissecting the rumors, framing them as an example of how toxic the online environment had become for Meghan. At the same time, they couldn't resist publishing screenshots of the videos fueling the speculation. Some experts weighed in. Maternity wear designers suggested that Meghan's choice of clothing, often layered and flowing, might explain why her bump appeared to change shape and size. Medical professionals argued that while baby bumps typically don't behave in the way shown in some videos, camera angles, posture, and fabric movement could all create optical illusions. Still, the rumors persisted. Fueling the controversy further was Meghan's tendency to cradle her bump in nearly every photograph. While many saw this as a tender and natural gesture from an expectant mother, others viewed it as a performative act designed to draw attention to her pregnancy. "She's overdoing it," critics said. "It feels staged." Meghan addressed this indirectly during an interview, saying, "I'm just very aware of protecting this little one, and keeping my hands there feels instinctive." But her comment did little to quiet the doubters. The controversy reached fever pitch when Meghan flew to New York City in late February 2019 for a private baby shower hosted by her friends Serena Williams and Amal Clooney. Paparazzi caught images of Meghan leaving the Mark Hotel, clutching her belly protectively. In some photos, her bump appeared pronounced. In others, it seemed almost absent. By the time Meghan and Harry welcomed Archie in May 2019, the internet had split into two camps. Those who believed Meghan had been unfairly targeted and those who remained convinced that something about her pregnancy didn't add up. Now, with the surrogate's shocking revelation, these old suspicions have resurfaced with renewed vigor. The woman claims Meghan's use of a prosthetic bump was essential to maintaining the illusion of her pregnancy while she carried Archie in private. Could this explain the odd shifting, collapsing, and inconsistencies so widely discussed at the time? Or were these moments simply the byproduct of intense public scrutiny, fueled by a desire to find fault with Meghan no matter what? As we move deeper into the surrogate story, we must ask, if Meghan was not pregnant, who orchestrated this elaborate deception and why? The answer, if it exists, could upend everything we thought we knew about Meghan, Harry, and the birth of their son. For months, rumors about Meghan Markle's pregnancy lingered in the background like a faint hum. Theories about shifting baby bumps and collapsing bellies captivated conspiracy circles but never quite broke into the mainstream. That changed the moment a woman, whose identity remains carefully concealed, came forward with a claim so explosive it reignited every suspicion and cast Meghan's fairy tale narrative into doubt. The woman's voice trembled as she spoke in a dimly lit room during a recorded interview shared by an anonymous whistleblower. Her face was obscured, her words carefully chosen, and her tone heavy with emotion. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said. "I gave birth to that child. Archie is my son." Yet even if Meghan and Harry's decision to use a surrogate was driven by fear of public backlash, does that justify what the surrogate describes as her emotional torment? In a chilling moment during her interview, she said, "I still dream about him. I can't stop wondering if he'll grow up never knowing the truth. And if he ever does find out, will he hate me for not fighting harder to be in his life?" Her words hang in the air like a haunting melody, begging one critical question. Is this the confession of a grieving mother seeking justice, or the fabrication of someone desperate for attention and money? The world is now divided. Meghan's supporters dismiss the woman as an opportunist exploiting old rumors for fame. Her detractors, however, see in her story the validation of suspicions they have harbored for years. As more details emerge, one thing is clear: the surrogate's voice cannot be easily silenced. And if even a fraction of what she claims is true, Meghan Markle's carefully constructed narrative may be on the verge of collapse. What secrets lie behind the walls of privilege and power? And how far would a duchess go to protect them? The answers, as shocking as they may be, could redefine everything we thought we knew about the Sussex family. As the surrogate story spreads like wildfire across the media landscape, attention turns to a critical question. If her claims are true, how exactly did Meghan and Harry orchestrate this arrangement? Could such an elaborate secret have been pulled off without leaving a trail? And what did the alleged agreement between the Sussexes and this mysterious woman truly involve? The surrogate describes being approached not by Meghan or Harry themselves, but by a middleman, someone she calls Mr. J. According to her, he was a polished, persuasive man who presented himself as a representative of a wealthy and highly private couple looking for a surrogate. He said they weren't celebrities, but they were important people who valued their privacy above all else, she recalled. He made it clear from the start that this was not going to be a typical surrogacy arrangement. The surrogate claims she was offered an initial payment of $250,000 just to consider the proposal. This sum, she says, came with strings attached, signing a preliminary non-disclosure agreement that forbade her from discussing any details with family, friends, or even her own attorney until a final contract was drawn up. I knew then that this wasn't normal, she admitted. But at the time, I told myself it was because of their status, not because they had anything to hide. The final agreement, she says, arrived weeks later via a private courier. It was more than 60 pages long and written in dense legal jargon. There were clauses about confidentiality, about relinquishing all parental rights, about security measures I had to agree to for the duration of the pregnancy, she explained. One clause, she recalls vividly, required her to agree to stay in an undisclosed location from the second trimester until delivery. It said I would be housed in a safe and private environment, and that my access to the outside world would be restricted, she said. They would provide everything: medical care, food, entertainment, even emotional support, but I couldn't have visitors. I couldn't use social media. I couldn't even call my parents unless I was on a monitored line. According to her, the compensation package included a base fee of $1.2 million plus additional bonuses for carrying twins, which did not happen, for agreeing to a planned cesarean section, and for successfully keeping the arrangement secret. The surrogate also alleged that the couple's representatives made her sign a post-birth silence clause requiring her never to speak of the pregnancy or the baby under threat of legal and financial consequences. Breaking this clause, she said, would result in a penalty of $5 million. Looking back, I don't know why I agreed, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. I think I was seduced by the money and by the idea that I was helping create a family, but I didn't realize how trapped I would feel later. And I certainly didn't realize how much it would haunt me. The woman claims she was flown to a private estate in the English countryside during her 5th month of pregnancy. She was told it was for her safety, to avoid unwanted media attention. She was assigned a team of doctors, nurses, and security personnel who worked in rotating shifts to ensure no detail was missed. They treated me well, but it felt clinical, cold even, she said. I wasn't allowed to leave the grounds. Every meal was brought to me. Every medical checkup was done in-house. It was like being in a gilded cage. There were brief, surreal moments when she was reminded of the magnitude of what she was part of. She claims Meghan visited her once, alone, during the early stages of the arrangement. She wore a scarf over her head and no makeup, the surrogate said. She thanked me for my sacrifice and told me that what we were doing was for the greater good. She seemed nervous, but also very determined. It wasn't a request, it was a command. The surrogate also claims she never met Prince Harry in person. Instead, communication was handled through intermediaries, and she was told he fully supported the arrangement but preferred not to be directly involved to maintain emotional distance. The alleged agreement even outlined the delivery process in meticulous detail. The surrogate says she was told she would give birth at a private hospital under an alias, and that the newborn would be immediately transferred into the care of Meghan and Harry. She would be discharged within 24 hours, with all records sealed. This wasn't like my first surrogacy experience, she explained. That time, there were photos with the parents, hugs, tears of joy. This time, it felt like I was handing over a piece of myself and vanishing. Skeptics have questioned her story, pointing out that such a complex arrangement would require the cooperation of dozens of people, lawyers, doctors, nurses, security staff, all willing to remain silent. Is it plausible that no one has leaked until now? Supporters of the surrogate counter that in the world of the ultra-wealthy and powerful, ironclad NDAs and fear of retaliation are more effective than people realize. Money talks, one surrogacy attorney explained. If enough people stand to benefit, they'll keep quiet. And if they don't, the threat of lawsuits, or worse, can shut most people down. If her account is true, this secret agreement may be the key to understanding why Meghan's pregnancy appeared so tightly choreographed. It could explain the oddities, her controlled public appearances, her decision to forego the traditional post-birth photo call, and her rapid postpartum recovery. The surrogate insists she kept her silence until now out of fear for her safety and financial ruin. But recently, a series of personal crises, her mother's illness, her own struggles with depression, led her to reconsider. I realized I was living a lie, she said. And that's no way to exist. Her voice cracked as she delivered her final words in the interview. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want money. I just want the truth to come out, because I can't carry this burden anymore. But as her story spreads, many are asking whether Meghan and Harry are the real victims, trapped in a storm of lies and accusations, or if they carefully constructed a narrative designed to protect their image and position at all costs. The truth behind this alleged agreement may never be fully uncovered. Yet if the surrogate's words are even partially accurate, they expose a side of royalty the public was never meant to see, where contracts and secrecy replace warmth and family, and where a child's origins become a carefully guarded state secret. As the next chapter unfolds, we'll examine Prince Harry's role in all this. Was he complicit in the deception? Or was he himself kept in the dark about how his son came into the world? The answer could change not only how we see Meghan, but also how we understand Harry's journey as a husband, a father, and a prince caught between two worlds. As the surrogate's explosive revelations grip the world, one question rises above all others. What did Prince Harry know? Was he an active participant in an elaborate cover-up, or has he been caught in a web of secrets, just as deceived as the public? To many, the idea of Harry masterminding such a scheme feels out of character. From childhood, he was known as the spare, the younger royal allowed a little more freedom than his brother William, yet bound by the invisible chains of duty. He spent years railing against royal protocol, rebelling in his youth, and eventually stepping back from his senior royal role altogether. Harry's public persona, earnest, emotional, and protective of those he loves, paints him as a man who would do anything for his family. But others argue that very devotion makes it all the more plausible that he would go along with Meghan's alleged plan. Harry has always struggled with losing control of his own narrative, one royal biographer noted. He's been deeply traumatized by the media circus that surrounded his mother, and when he saw how Meghan was treated, he became fiercely protective. If Meghan came to him with a plan to use a surrogate, but keep it hidden to avoid scrutiny, he may well have agreed, out of love and fear. Supporters of the surrogate believe Harry played a more active role than he would ever admit. They point to his behavior during Meghan's pregnancy, his refusal to answer reporters' questions about her due date, his insistence on keeping key details about Archie's birth private, and his decision to break with royal tradition by skipping the iconic Lindo Wing hospital photo call. In the eyes of skeptics, these were not signs of a couple merely asserting their independence. They were carefully orchestrated maneuvers to keep a secret from leaking. He shut the press out entirely, said one former royal correspondent. He built walls around Meghan and himself. That could have been a protective gesture. Or it could have been about hiding something much bigger. Then there's the issue of Harry's own statements about fatherhood. In interviews, he frequently spoke of his desire to become a father and the deep emotional importance of raising a family. Some wonder, if he truly knew Archie was not Meghan's biological child, would that knowledge have influenced his decision to step away from royal duties and move his family across the Atlantic? One particularly telling moment came during the Sussexes' now famous interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021. When asked about Archie's birth, Harry seemed careful with his words, focusing instead on how joyful and life-changing it was to become a parent. Meghan, on the other hand, spoke of the emotional toll of pregnancy under the intense glare of the media. Did you feel protected by the institution during that time? Oprah asked. No, Meghan replied flatly. For believers in the surrogate story, Meghan's answer takes on new significance. Could her need for protection have extended beyond tabloid coverage and into keeping the surrogacy hidden? But others argue that Harry was as much in the dark as anyone else. They speculate that Meghan, if the surrogate's claims are true, could have concealed the arrangement even from her husband. Men often take their wives at their word when it comes to pregnancy, one family therapist explained. If Meghan told him she was pregnant, Harry may have had no reason to doubt her, especially with the world celebrating their news. This theory posits a devastating possibility that Harry may have been used as a pawn in a deception designed to maintain appearances. If true, it raises chilling questions about his agency in his own marriage and whether he has begun to suspect the truth in private moments of reflection. Adding another layer of intrigue are whispers from palace insiders who claim Harry was never entirely comfortable with certain aspects of Meghan's pregnancy narrative. There were moments when he seemed withdrawn, one aide reportedly said. He was protective, yes, but also tense, as though he was carrying a secret too heavy to bear. Some point to his emotional displays in public, such as the moment he teared up during a speech at a charity event in 2019, thanking attendees for supporting Meghan during her pregnancy. At the time, it was seen as a touching expression of gratitude. Now, in light of the surrogate's claims, some wonder if his tears hid a more complex mix of emotions, guilt, fear, or even shame. Royal observers are split. Was Harry complicit, agreeing to deceive the world to protect Meghan and their family's privacy? Or has he been blindsided by the surrogate's story, struggling behind closed doors to reconcile what he thought was true with what he may now be discovering? If Harry knew and participated in the alleged deception, the implications for his reputation are enormous. He has long styled himself as a truth-teller, a man willing to challenge the outdated traditions of the monarchy and expose its failings. To learn he had actively participated in one of the greatest royal secrets of the modern age would shatter that image. If, however, Harry was unaware of the surrogacy, the consequences are equally heartbreaking. It would mean he has spent years living a lie, raising a child whose origins he does not fully understand. Worse still, it could explain some of the tension reportedly brewing between him and Meghan in recent months. Anonymous sources have claimed that Harry's decision to make multiple solo trips to the UK, ostensibly to visit his ailing father and attend charity events, has created friction at home. They've had some difficult conversations, one source alleged. Harry's asking questions Meghan doesn't want to answer. Is Harry beginning to suspect the truth? The surrogate believes so. I think he knows, she said softly in her interview. I think he's known for a while, but he doesn't know what to do with that knowledge. How do you even begin to process something like that? Others insist Harry remains steadfastly loyal to Meghan and would never betray her confidence, even if he did know about the surrogate arrangement. The tragedy of this chapter lies in the uncertainty. Harry, once seen as the golden prince of a new generation, now finds himself at the center of a narrative that questions not only his judgment, but also his role as a husband and father. As the world speculates about his involvement, one thing is clear. Harry is either a co-conspirator in one of the most carefully guarded secrets in royal history, or the ultimate victim of it. And if he is indeed a victim, what happens when he finally uncovers the full extent of the truth? Would his love for Meghan survive such a revelation? Would his bond with Archie remain unbroken? Or would it all come crashing down, leaving Harry more isolated than ever? These questions linger heavily as we turn to the next chapter of this unfolding drama, the allegations of a palace cover-up. Because if Meghan and Harry managed to keep this secret for so long, they surely didn't do it alone. As the surrogate's bombshell confession reverberates around the world, attention turns to the one institution powerful enough to contain a scandal of such magnitude, Buckingham Palace. If Meghan and Harry did, in fact, orchestrate a surrogate pregnancy and successfully concealed it from the public, could they have done it alone? Or was there a deliberate, coordinated effort from within the royal household to suppress the truth? To understand the mechanics of such a cover-up, we must first examine the nature of the institution. For centuries, the British royal family has operated like a fortress, guarding its secrets fiercely. Scandals that might have destroyed lesser families were absorbed, managed, and buried beneath layers of tradition, silence, and influence. From the abdication crisis of Edward VIII to Princess Margaret's forbidden romance, the palace has proven itself a master of narrative control. In this case, the stakes would have been unimaginably high. Meghan was already a controversial figure within the monarchy, seen by some as a breath of fresh air and by others as a disruptive force. Her pregnancy was a critical moment in her integration into the royal family, a chance to cement her role as Harry's wife and the mother of his children. The optics were everything. The surrogate claims that palace operatives were involved from the very beginning. They didn't just know about it, she alleged in her interview. They orchestrated parts of it. From the legal paperwork to the security arrangements, the palace was pulling the strings to make sure the world saw what they wanted it to see. According to her, she was taken to a secluded estate in the English countryside under the watchful eyes of royal security officers. The estate, she says, belonged to a distant aristocratic cousin of the Queen and was retrofitted to provide the surrogate with the utmost privacy. They had nurses, chefs, even yoga instructors brought in, she explained. Everything was designed to keep me healthy and hidden. She claims her medical appointments were arranged through private clinics that catered exclusively to high-profile clients. I was told to use an alias, she said. Every document, every scan had my fake name on it. And the doctors, they knew not to ask questions. When the surrogate asked why such extreme measures were necessary, she claims she was told, "You're carrying the future of the monarchy. There can't be even a whisper of scandal." If her account is accurate, it suggests that not only Meghan and Harry but also senior palace officials were complicit in crafting a lie to protect the family's image. Supporters of the surrogate point to other instances where the royal family has successfully controlled narratives. The Queen's handling of Princess Diana's death in 1997 is often cited as an example of how the monarchy can shift public opinion through carefully timed statements and appearances. Could the same machinery have been deployed to conceal a surrogacy? Critics argue it's implausible. They suggest that such a large-scale cover-up would require the silence of too many people: doctors, midwives, lawyers, aides, and security personnel. Secrets of this magnitude don't stay buried, one royal commentator said. If this were true, we'd have seen leaks years ago. But others insist the monarchy's reach extends far beyond what most people imagine. The royals operate in a world of NDAs and quiet influence, said a former palace staffer who spoke on condition of anonymity. If they want something hidden, they'll throw money and power at the problem until it disappears. The surrogate also claims that the palace maintained strict control over Meghan's public appearances during her pregnancy. Every time Meghan went out in public, it was a performance, she alleged. They rehearsed how she would cradle her bump, how she would move, even what she would say about her cravings. It was all designed to sell the image of a glowing, expectant mother. This claim is bolstered, in the minds of some, by Meghan's decision to skip the traditional post-birth photo call on the steps of the hospital, a ritual followed by royal mothers for decades. Instead, Meghan and Harry introduced Archie to the world in a controlled photo session inside Windsor Castle, away from prying lenses. At the time, they said it was a choice made for privacy. But conspiracy theorists argue it was to maintain the illusion that Meghan had given birth naturally. Then there's the matter of Archie's birth certificate. When it was released, eagle-eyed observers noticed that Meghan's name had been amended, changing Rachel Meghan Markle to Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Some argued this was an administrative change. Others suggested it was part of a deliberate effort to obscure medical records. One particularly damning claim comes from a former royal aide who reportedly told an investigative journalist, "There are things about Archie's birth that will never see the light of day." And that's exactly how they want it. Supporters of Meghan and Harry are quick to dismiss all of this as baseless conjecture. They argue that Meghan endured intense racism and bullying from the British press, and that these wild theories are just an extension of that hatred. But as more details emerge from the surrogate, the possibility of a palace cover-up becomes harder to dismiss outright. The question that haunts observers is not just whether the palace covered up a surrogacy, but why. Why would an institution so obsessed with lineage and appearances go to such lengths to preserve this particular narrative? The answer may lie in the royal family's historical fear of scandal. Surrogacy, though legal and increasingly common, remains controversial in some circles. For a monarchy that thrives on the illusion of perfection, the revelation that a royal child was born via surrogate could have triggered a storm of negative headlines. But could fear of bad press justify what the surrogate describes as her emotional imprisonment? "They made me feel like I was carrying a crown jewel," she said. "But the second Archie was born, I was discarded like I never existed." As the public digests her claims, another question looms. If the palace did help orchestrate this cover-up, how far would they go to keep it hidden? Would they threaten, intimidate, or even ruin the life of a woman they once relied on? We may never know for sure. The royal family has remained silent on the matter, issuing their standard response: "We do not comment on private family matters." But silence, as history has shown, can sometimes be louder than words. And as we move to the next chapter, the focus shifts back to Meghan herself. Why would she allegedly agree to such an arrangement, and what would motivate her to hide the truth at all costs? The answer, the surrogate claims, lies in Meghan's obsession with power, image, and legacy. If the surrogate's allegations are true, the next question strikes at the heart of the controversy. Why would Meghan Markle, an ambitious, media-savvy, and image-conscious woman, choose to orchestrate such an elaborate deception? What would drive her to allegedly conceal the use of a surrogate and present herself as the biological mother of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor? To understand this, we must first explore Meghan's relationship with power and public perception. From the moment she entered the royal arena, Meghan was more than a wife to a prince. She became a global symbol. For many, she embodied modernity, diversity, and a break from royal traditions that often felt outdated and rigid. To her critics, however, Meghan represented something else entirely: disruption, ambition, and a desire to control the narrative at any cost. Meghan's public journey has been one of calculated appearances and carefully curated images. As an actress, she understood the value of presentation and how every detail, from posture to clothing, could influence how she was perceived. When she transitioned into her role as Duchess of Sussex, those instincts didn't fade. Instead, they intensified under the blinding glare of royal life. The surrogate, in her emotional interview, touched on this very point. "From the first moment I was approached, it was clear this wasn't just about creating a family," she said. "It was about creating an image, an unbreakable, untouchable image." Meghan wanted the world to see her as the perfect royal wife and mother. To admit she used a surrogate would have destroyed that. This claim aligns with observations from royal commentators who've noted Meghan's meticulous approach to controlling her brand. Whether it was guest editing British Vogue, launching the Archetypes podcast, or giving her explosive interview to Oprah Winfrey, Meghan has consistently sought to define her own story. Surrogacy, while legal and increasingly accepted in many parts of the world, remains a topic fraught with judgment, particularly within elite circles obsessed with appearances. For a royal family steeped in centuries of tradition, the idea that a duchess could outsource her pregnancy might have been seen as a profound embarrassment. "It's not just about biology," explained one royal historian. "It's about the optics. Royals are expected to embody certain ideals, and motherhood is one of them. To admit you didn't carry your own child would be perceived, rightly or wrongly, as a failure to fulfill that ideal." In Meghan's case, the stakes were even higher. As the first biracial woman to marry into the British monarchy, she was already under intense scrutiny. Every gesture, every outfit, every word was dissected by the press and public alike. A surrogate pregnancy would have provided ammunition for her harshest critics. "She was already accused of being inauthentic," said a former royal aide. If word got out that she hadn't carried her own child, the narrative could have been spun as her faking the most sacred role of all, that of a mother. The surrogate insists that Meghan was acutely aware of these dynamics. During their one brief meeting, she recalls Meghan saying, "People already think I don't belong here. If they knew the truth, they'd use it to destroy me and him." By him, she meant Harry. Those sympathetic to Meghan argue that if she did choose surrogacy, she had every right to keep it private. "It's her body, her family, her choice," said one supporter online. "Why should she have to disclose something so intimate to the entire world?" But critics counter that Meghan's desire for privacy clashed with her carefully cultivated public image as a hands-on, devoted mother. From cradling her bump in nearly every photo to speaking passionately about motherhood as her most important role, Meghan leaned heavily into the imagery of pregnancy. If she didn't carry Archie, then every time she touched her belly in public was part of an act, said one royal commentator. That's not just privacy, that's deliberate deception. Another layer to Meghan's alleged motivation lies in her future legacy. Meghan has often spoken of wanting to inspire young women, to show them they can have it all. In her eyes, perhaps, a surrogate pregnancy didn't fit that narrative. Carrying her own child may have seemed essential to cementing her place in history, not just as a duchess, but as a mother who did it all under extraordinary pressure. There's also the issue of power within her marriage. Some speculate that Meghan feared how using a surrogate might affect Harry's perception of her. Would the man who had lost his mother so tragically and longed for a family of his own feel differently about a child carried by another woman? The surrogate hinted at this dynamic during her interview. She seemed almost desperate to keep Harry happy, she said. I don't think it was about deceiving him. I think it was about giving him the fairy tale he always wanted. If this is true, it raises troubling questions about the foundation of Harry and Meghan's relationship. Was Meghan's alleged decision an act of love and protection, or a manipulation designed to bind Harry closer to her? Psychologists observing the saga suggest that Meghan's behavior, if the surrogate's claims are true, might stem from a deep fear of rejection. For someone like Meghan, who's faced racism, sexism, and classism, the pressure to prove herself in every possible way would be immense, one expert said. Hiding a surrogate pregnancy might have felt like the only way to survive in an environment as hostile as the British monarchy. Yet this explanation, however sympathetic, does not absolve Meghan of responsibility. If she truly orchestrated this deception, she also imposed a heavy emotional burden on the surrogate, a woman who now claims to be haunted by the child she carried but can never claim as her own. As this story unfolds, Meghan remains silent. No statements. No denials. No interviews. Some see this as an admission of guilt. Others view it as a dignified refusal to engage with salacious gossip. But silence does not erase the growing questions about Meghan's true motivations. Was she a woman protecting her family in an unforgiving world? Or was she crafting a perfect image at any cost, even if it meant erasing the surrogate from the narrative entirely? As we move to the next chapter, we'll examine how the public has responded to these revelations. The world is now deeply divided between those who see Meghan as a victim of relentless attacks and those who believe the surrogate story has pulled back the curtain on the Duchess's carefully managed facade. And at the heart of it all is one unavoidable truth. If Meghan did lie about her pregnancy, the fallout could forever change how history remembers her. When news of the surrogate's claims broke, the reaction was nothing short of seismic. The story ignited a cultural firestorm, dividing not just royal watchers but entire nations, as supporters and detractors clashed in a battle of beliefs, emotions, and accusations. At first, the response was disbelief. For years, Meghan Markle had been at the center of controversy, but this was different. This wasn't about fashion choices, royal protocols, or feuds within the family. This was about motherhood, identity, and the integrity of one of the most closely scrutinized couples on Earth. Within hours of the surrogate's interview being leaked online, hashtags began trending worldwide. On one side were hashtags like #MeghanLied and #SurrogateTruth, flooded with people expressing outrage and betrayal. On the other were #WeStandWithMeghan and #ProtectMeghan, where fans decried the allegations as yet another smear campaign against a woman who had endured relentless racism and misogyny. Why would anyone go this far to fabricate such a wild story? Asked one of Meghan's defenders on Twitter. Haven't we punished this woman enough? But her critics countered just as fiercely. It all makes sense now, wrote another user. The bump photos, the quick recovery, the secrecy around Archie's birth, it was right in front of us all along. Mainstream media outlets quickly picked up the story. Major networks ran panel discussions dissecting every angle. Morning talk shows asked, could this really be true? While late-night comedians joked about moon bumps and royal stand-ins. Tabloid covers plastered Meghan's face next to headlines like the mother of all lies and royal baby bombshell, the woman who claims Archie is hers. Public opinion polls painted a vivid picture of the divide. In the UK, a survey showed that 47% of respondents believed the surrogate story was credible, while 39% thought it was an outright fabrication. In the US, where Meghan has a stronger support base, the numbers skewed in her favor. 55% dismissed the claims as false. But even there, 30% admitted they had doubts. Social media became a battlefield. Videos of Meghan cradling her bump were reposted with captions like, "Was this all an act?" alongside slow-motion analyses of her movements during public engagements. Conversely, fan accounts shared clips of Meghan speaking about motherhood with captions like, "This is a woman who loves her child deeply. Don't let lies destroy her family." Celebrities weighed in, further fanning the flames. Some of Meghan's close allies, like Serena Williams and Oprah Winfrey, posted cryptic messages about resilience in the face of cruelty and the truth always rising to the surface. Meanwhile, outspoken critics like Piers Morgan demanded an investigation into the surrogate's claims, calling them the most damaging royal allegations since Diana. For the surrogate herself, the backlash was intense. She became both a martyr and a villain in the public eye. Supporters hailed her bravery for breaking her silence, with one viral post reading, "She sacrificed everything to bring Archie into this world. She deserves to be heard." Critics accused her of seeking fame and fortune, flooding her with hateful messages and even death threats. "She's a liar," one commentator said on a popular podcast. "If she had any real proof, she would have brought it forward years ago. This is just another person trying to cash in on Meghan's fame." But others weren't so quick to dismiss her. Legal experts began debating whether the surrogate could be sued for breach of contract if her claims proved true. Some questioned whether the palace itself might be complicit in suppressing her story for years, fueling more suspicion. The royal family's silence only deepened the intrigue. Buckingham Palace issued its usual response: "We do not comment on private family matters." But that statement did little to calm the frenzy. Instead, it gave rise to speculation that the palace was working behind the scenes to manage the fallout. Prince Harry and Meghan, too, remained tight-lipped. No interviews, no social media posts, no official denials. This absence of response split the public once again. Was their silence a dignified refusal to engage with malicious rumors? Or was it a sign of guilt? Psychologists weighed in on the societal reaction. "This isn't just about Meghan Markle," one expert explained. "It's about our collective obsession with celebrity, motherhood, and authenticity." People feel personally invested in her narrative. For her fans, to believe these allegations is to admit they were wrong about her. For her critics, this feels like validation of every doubt they've ever had. Across the Atlantic, the story also reignited the debate about race, class, and privilege in the royal family. Some argued that Meghan's treatment, both in the media and now with the surrogate's claims, was rooted in an unwillingness to accept a biracial duchess at the heart of Britain's most traditional institution. "This wouldn't be happening if she were white," one activist tweeted. "They've been trying to tear her down from day one." Others pushed back, insisting this had nothing to do with race and everything to do with integrity. If she lied about something as fundamental as giving birth to her own child, that's a betrayal of public trust, a royal historian argued on a BBC panel. Protests even broke out outside royal residences. In London, a small group gathered at Kensington Palace with signs reading, "We demand the truth." While in Los Angeles, Meghan supporters staged a counter-protest, chanting, "Leave Meghan alone." The story took on a life of its own. Conspiracy theorists began weaving elaborate tales of secret DNA tests, hidden hospital records, and whispered cover-ups by senior royals. Tabloids printed alleged, insider accounts of Meghan rehearsing how to walk and sit like a pregnant woman, fueling the narrative that her entire pregnancy had been staged. But amid all the noise, one question persisted: what about Archie? How would these revelations, true or false, affect the little boy at the center of it all? Even Meghan's harshest critics admitted that Archie was an innocent party in this storm. "Whatever happened," one columnist wrote, "this child didn't ask for any of it, and he deserves to grow up knowing the truth about where he came from." As the world remains deeply divided, one thing is certain. The surrogate's claims have shattered the image of calm that Harry and Meghan worked so hard to project. The public wants answers, and until they get them, the debate will rage on, online, in living rooms, and in the highest halls of power. In the next chapter, the surrogate's emotional plea will take center stage. What does she truly want? Is it money, recognition, or something deeper? And how might her determination to be heard reshape the royal narrative forever? The surrogate sits alone in a quiet room, her face blurred in shadow during the recorded interview that has shaken the world. Her voice is soft, almost fragile, but there is a sharp edge of determination in every word. As her story continues to unfold, the question that lingers in every viewer's mind is this: why now? Why risk everything? Her privacy, her safety, her financial stability, to step into the eye of a media storm that shows no sign of subsiding. "I didn't want to do this," she says, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "For years, I told myself it wasn't my place. I signed the contracts, I agreed to the terms, and I walked away. But it never left me. He never left me." The he she refers to is Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, the little boy born into royalty, the child she claims to have carried in secret. For her, Archie is not just a distant figure smiling in official photographs or appearing briefly in videos on Meghan and Harry's social media accounts. To her, Archie is a part of her, a piece of herself that she was forced to surrender. I dream about him, she confesses, her voice breaking for the first time. I see his face in the newspapers, on TV, and every time I do, my heart aches. I know I have no right to him. I know what I agreed to. But I can't help it. I'm his mother. It is this raw, emotional plea that has divided public opinion even further. To some, her words are the anguished cry of a woman wronged. Someone who made an unimaginable sacrifice and now lives with the torment of her decision. To others, it is a manipulative performance designed to tug at heartstrings and lend credibility to a story that remains unproven. But the surrogate insists she is not seeking money or fame. I don't want a dime from them, she says firmly. This isn't about compensation. It's about truth. It's about Archie. He deserves to know where he came from. He deserves to know that I loved him, even if I was never allowed to hold him. She recalls the day of Archie's birth with haunting detail. It was early morning. The room was dimly lit. There were doctors and nurses everywhere, all of them under strict instructions not to speak to me unless absolutely necessary. I wasn't even allowed to see him properly. They wrapped him up and carried him out before I could touch his face. I begged them, just one moment, one photograph, but they said no. They said it wasn't part of the plan. Her account is chilling, not only because of the coldness she describes, but also because of what it suggests about the lengths to which Meghan and Harry, and perhaps the palace, would allegedly go to protect their secret. I don't blame Meghan, the surrogate says softly, her eyes glistening. I think she was scared. She had so much pressure on her, and maybe she thought this was the only way. But they never should have made me invisible. I'm a person. I carried him for 9 months. I kept him safe, and now I'm nothing to them. She describes the years since Archie's birth as a kind of emotional limbo. Legally, she has no claim to him. She cannot reach out, cannot send a letter or a gift, cannot even whisper his name aloud in her own home for fear that her children, born before her surrogacy, will ask questions she is not allowed to answer. Every Mother's Day, I cry, she admits. Not for the children I'm raising. They're beautiful, and I'm grateful for them. I cry for the one I had to give away. As her words spread across the globe, reactions remain polarized. Meghan's defenders argue that the surrogate knew what she was agreeing to, and that her current anguish does not excuse breaking a legal agreement. She's trying to rewrite history, one critic wrote online. She signed her rights away. That was her choice. But supporters of the surrogate see her as a tragic figure, trapped in a system that commodified her body and silenced her voice. This woman is suffering, a human rights advocate tweeted. Surrogacy agreements often fail to account for the emotional realities of carrying a child. She deserves compassion, not condemnation. Legal experts warn that her decision to come forward could have dire consequences. If the confidentiality clause in her contract is as strict as she claims, she could face lawsuits, financial ruin, or worse. They'll come after her with everything they've got, one lawyer commented. The royals protect their secrets fiercely, but the surrogate seems undeterred. They can take my house, my savings, everything, she says. But they can't take my truth. And they can't take the love I feel for him. That's mine. At the heart of her plea lies a simple question. Does a child have a right to know their origins? For centuries, royal children have been raised with a clear sense of lineage and heritage. In Archie's case, that lineage may now be clouded by uncertainty and secrecy. Someday he'll be old enough to ask questions, the surrogate says, her voice trembling. What happens then? Will they tell him the truth? Or will they let him live his whole life not knowing? As this chapter of the story comes to a close, one thing is clear. The surrogate's voice has changed the conversation. What began as a whispered rumor has become a roaring debate about ethics, motherhood, and the power of truth. But even as she bears her soul to the world, the stakes grow higher. Meghan and Harry's silence grows more deafening. The palace's refusal to comment adds fuel to the fire. And the public's appetite for answers has never been more voracious. In the next chapter, attention shifts to the legal ramifications of these revelations. Could the surrogate's decision to speak out spark a battle for custody, inheritance, and titles? And what would that mean for Archie, a little boy caught between two mothers and two worlds? As the world reels from the surrogate's revelations and her heart-wrenching plea, attention is now turning to the legal minefield this story has created. If her claims are true, the ramifications are not only emotional and ethical, they could spark a courtroom battle of unprecedented proportions. At the center of this storm is a little boy, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. To the public, he is the son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a child born into one of the most famous families on earth. But if the surrogate story holds any truth, Archie's very identity may now be up for debate. Lawyers on both sides of the Atlantic are scrambling to weigh in. Under British law, the woman who gives birth to a child is considered the legal mother, regardless of any surrogacy agreement, unless a parental order has been granted through the courts. Did Harry and Meghan secure such an order? Was the process handled discreetly to avoid media attention? Or did they bypass certain steps in their effort to maintain secrecy? If no parental order exists, then technically this surrogate could make a claim, explained one family law expert. She could challenge Meghan's legal status as Archie's mother, though it would be an uphill battle. The courts are generally reluctant to disrupt a child's settled family life. In the United States, where Meghan and Harry now reside, surrogacy laws vary from state to state. California, where Meghan is believed to have spent time during her pregnancy, recognizes intended parents as the legal parents from the outset if proper paperwork is filed. But again, the question arises, did Meghan and Harry follow all the correct procedures, or did their desire for privacy lead them to cut corners? The surrogate has insisted she is not seeking custody of Archie, but legal analysts warn her statements might not protect her from lawsuits. If Meghan and Harry's legal team can prove she violated confidentiality agreements, she could face financial penalties so severe they would effectively ruin her. NDAs in cases like this are ironclad, said one Los Angeles attorney familiar with celebrity surrogacy arrangements. Breaking one isn't just a breach of contract, it's a declaration of war. Supporters of the surrogate argue that no amount of legal intimidation can erase her biological and emotional connection to the child. She carried him, nourished him, brought him into the world, said a reproductive rights activist. Contracts can't change biology, but critics see her as a threat to the stability of a family already under intense pressure. This woman knew what she signed up for, said a commentator on a royal news podcast. She's trying to rewrite the rules because she regrets her decision. But what about Archie? Does he deserve to have his life turned upside down because of her guilt? Adding fuel to the fire are whispers of potential inheritance complications. As the son of Prince Harry, Archie is in the line of succession to the British throne, albeit far removed. If the surrogate's claims are validated, some royal historians argue it could raise questions about Archie's legitimacy under centuries-old succession laws. The monarchy has always been obsessed with bloodlines, said one historian. If a future monarch were born via surrogacy, especially in secrecy, it would create a constitutional headache the palace is desperate to avoid. Others dismiss such concerns as outdated. This is the 21st century, said a royal biographer. Surrogacy doesn't change the fact that Harry is Archie's father and Meghan is his mother in every way that matters. Still, the surrogate's decision to speak out may embolden others. Rumors are swirling that medical professionals, legal aides, and even palace staff involved in Meghan's alleged pregnancy might be considering coming forward with their own stories. If just one insider breaks ranks, the whole house of cards could collapse, said a former royal correspondent. The legal battle wouldn't just be between Meghan and the surrogate, it could drag in the monarchy itself. There are also geopolitical implications to consider. As U.S. citizens now living in California, Meghan and Harry are subject to American laws. But Archie was born in the UK, where the monarchy still wields influence over public institutions. Could the royal family quietly use their connections to quash any legal challenges? Or would such interference only inflame public outrage further? Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry's silence grows louder with each passing day. Lawyers close to the couple have refused to confirm or deny the existence of a surrogacy agreement, issuing only a brief statement. These allegations are deeply hurtful and untrue. The Duke and Duchess remain committed to protecting their family's privacy. But the surrogate is undeterred. In her most recent statement, she said, "I don't want to take Archie away from the only parents he has ever known. I don't want a courtroom fight. I just want acknowledgement. I want him to know that I exist, that I didn't abandon him." Her words may carry emotional weight, but they also raise practical questions. If Archie grows up and one day learns of her existence, would he seek out a relationship with her? Could he challenge his own birth records? Some family law specialists warn that the situation could escalate into a landmark custody case, setting precedents for surrogacy arrangements worldwide. This could become the most high-profile surrogacy dispute in history, one attorney said. The whole world is watching, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As speculation intensifies, the palace faces growing calls for transparency. Members of Parliament have even suggested that the monarchy clarify its stance on surrogacy, given its potential impact on succession. But as with so many royal scandals before it, silence remains the strategy of choice. The next chapter of this story may well be fought not in the press but in the courts. And as the legal battle looms, one question grows more urgent with every passing day: can Archie's future and his sense of identity survive the truth coming out? In the next chapter, we'll examine Meghan's reaction to these mounting pressures. Will she remain silent and weather the storm, or will she fight back in a way that could either redeem her image or destroy it completely?